Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next session. I'm joined here by Alfie Hoskers, the Technical Manager for Secured by Design of the Police Crime Prevention Initiative and supporter of this year's event. In this interview, we'll be taking a look at several aspects of certification and the changing legislation landscape for doors in both the fire and security context. Alfie, thank you so much for being here today and joining us. Just to start, could you give us a little background into who you are and the role of the PCPI is?
Hi, Rebecca. Yeah, I'm Alfie Hoskers. As you've said, I'm the Secured by Design Technical Manager who works for an organisation called Police Crime Prevention Initiatives. It's an organisation that's non-for-profit, represents the UK Police Service, of which Secured by Design is one part of the initiative, of which there are several, from LP Savvy to a police academy, training individuals with the mantra of designing out crime, keeping people safe, and working with other industries to, as I've said, reduce all aspects of crime and antisocial behaviour. We've been around for about 34 years and came about, to be fair, in the late 80s in response to burglary, where burglary hit a spike of over 2 million. So we started working with industry and the relevant specialists qualified to start looking at standards to try and make products, for example, locks, more resistant to burglary. And we've evolved now over those last 30 years from burglary, antisocial behaviour, vehicle crime resistance products, all working with industry and qualified individuals, whether it's fire and smoke and security that we're talking about today, right through to our colleagues at the nighttime economy, licensing, right through to counter-terrorism. So we've been working and evolving over the last 30 years, but to be clear, we do represent the UK Police Service.
Well, thank you. It's definitely an established reputation that you guys have, especially here in the UK, like I said. Well, it's also safe to say that we're in an evolving time when it comes to standards and best practice in both the fire and security sides of the market, particularly for high-rise residential buildings. So obviously the tragic fire that happened at Grenfell Tower in June 2017 led to much examination of the escape protocols for high-rise buildings and the materials and products that were utilised within that building process. So how has this affected Secured by Design?
Yeah, Rebecca, you're absolutely right. I think we've evolved. And as a result of Grenfell, we started looking at our offerings. And as I've said, to be clear, we know how to prevent burglary, but we get involved and get the relevant qualified individuals involved. And we started to have a look at our product offerings, for example, apartment doors within high-rise buildings, flats. And we wanted to make them, even from our perspective, less vulnerable to interpretation as possible. And I'll quantify that. So, for example, a fire door or an apartment door entrance into a flat has got many aspects that it needs to perform. So, for example, security, i.e. preventing someone burgling, breaking through the door. And secondly, if we stick with these, fire, i.e. 30-minute resistance. There are others, for example, to give you a resistance against a fire. And smoke, that's key. We can't forget about the issues of smoke and inhalation, because often people are killed, unfortunately, before the fire ever gets to them. So we looked at our offerings. And let's be clear here, Rebecca, this is just from a police Secured by Design perspective. We wanted to make it as less confusing as possible. So we started working with industry, certification bodies, government sort of bodies, to be fair, that were qualified. And what we did is we worked with the likes of BM BSI and other certification bodies, IFC, there are a ball more, to look at schemes that would make doors more secure and more performance-led. And what I mean by that is that all the performance requirements had to go on what's called third-party certification on a single scope. What that means is that someone could go and buy a door, it goes through exacting standards on one document, and people can see exactly what that door does via looking at one document, rather than what is out there is performance is scattered across a number of documents. For SPD purposes, we just wanted it on one, and that's what we started to develop. And over the last 3 years, in line with industry and qualified experts, in order for police support, we expect it to be on what's called one scope certification, i.e. the performance characteristics of enhanced security, for example, PAS 24, fire resistance, and smoke control. And we expect those to be on one document. And that, to be fair, results in hopefully a lack of confusion. It becomes more clear on what that door can do. That's just one example of what we've done, Rebecca.
So it's definitely a streamlining of that certification process, and also, I suppose, raising the competency, just to make sure that, you know, everything is, you know, a building manager, for example, is ensuring that every single door in that building is secure by design and is fireproof, security proof, and smoke proof. So, you know, really fantastic, ideal to have that all together in one. And Secure by Design was also involved in the government investigation post Grenfell. Could you just tell us a little bit about how much you were involved in that?
I think from Secure by Design's point of view, we were involved with a number of stakeholders. I think looking at best practice going forward to try and reduce the possibilities of these instances happening again, the unfortunate events, to look at good practice and evolve. So, for example, looking at responsible persons, looking at building regulations, and looking at a whole host of things to, as you said earlier, with the fire door, to streamline things and make things more fit for purpose.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the findings from the investigation, or the investigation's aims?
Well, yeah, I think the findings are still ongoing, but as I've said, what's resulted from that, as I said earlier, is the looking at amending the building regulations, making things more streamlined. For example, looking at the responsibilities of the responsible person of these buildings, for example, to ensure that fire protection measures are met. And there's a process in place to make sure that people are properly looking at it and they know what they're doing. What's also ongoing at the moment is a consultation document from the Home Office, I believe, to be fair, in best practice within flats, of which we have provided a consultation response, all with trying to get best practice out there and make sure people are focused on the relevant elements of a building to make it safe for the people.
I'm already seeing, I suppose, some of those changes come into fruition, into changes in regulations at the moment. But obviously, we should hopefully see that develop over time in the gateway process over the next kind of couple of years, to be honest, and hopefully beyond, as we continuously evolve these standards and best practice to match the demands of the industry. And just for the wider context as well, can you just give us a little summary about how, you know, doors in general are paramount to not just fire safety, but also security of residents and assets, and particularly in high-rise buildings?
Of course, Rebecca. I mean, let's be clear on any guidance that we give or recommendations. For example, what we're talking about, the flat apartment doors, for example, it's all done in association with the relevant stakeholders, those that are in the know, because there are other factors in a building. You've got security, fire, and smoke, but we've got to make sure it's fit for purpose, because you don't want to push for one thing and it negates another. So just because it's the police, it doesn't mean that we jump up and down and that's okay. No, going forward, we're indebted to a number of stakeholders. So you're absolutely right what you said. So going forward, what that means is that we work with the fire brigade to ensure that the security of that door doesn't have an issue with the fire brigade getting in, for example. For example, there'll be other things in terms of access control into the building or the floors of an apartment block. Because let's be clear here, some of these buildings across the country, in London, for example, Birmingham, Leeds, are quite tall buildings with lots of people being able to mull around with them. So we also look at access control measures to ensure that people can't mull around, to keep people safe, so there's no antisocial behaviour or access to crime, i.e. burgling of the flats. But the thread of this is to ensure, where possible, if there is a requirement for smoke and fire, then it must meet our requirements if they're looking for what's called Secure by Design sign-off, and that must be all on one scope of certification for that door, where it meets enhanced security, fire and smoke, i.e. it's gone through a test and tests that same door that meets enhanced security, fire and smoke, is competent in that particular performance, i.e. resistance to 30 minutes of fire, 3 meters cubed of smoke, for example, ambient temperature, whatever that would be. And crux to this, from a police perspective, is we expect our company, the member companies, to be fair, if they are members of ours, or for police sign-off, that it's what's called third-party certification. And what that means is that particular company goes through an audit process and is constantly monitored by a body that's UCAS approved, i.e. engineers and test certification managers go into the company and monitor it on a yearly process and constantly go and take a door, for example, and test it again and again to make sure it's fit for purpose. And why that's important, certification, is that it's not just a one-off test, i.e. it passes on that day. Certification ensures there's a process in place that is constantly monitored. Now, just if I could just add a little bit more, what's also important is the maintenance and installation of these things, particularly in high-rise flats. But in fairness, all over the place, because there's no point of products being fit for purpose for security, fire and smoke, and it's not installed correctly. And/or maintenance, i.e. you don't put parts on that are competent for its relevant performance that can affect it, i.e. affect the security, fire and smoke. So I've warbled on a bit there, Rebecca, but it is key, and that's the crux of it all being on a single scope of certification. It reduces the confusion of what that door can do, because it's all on one document that says, yeah, that door is fit for purpose across that range of performance requirements, enhanced security, fire and smoke, for example.
Yeah, definitely. And you're making the responsible person or the building manager or the architect's job also a lot easier, because when you've got to think of, the entire composition of a building, putting all those different aspects in with all the different regulations, all the different planning permissions and so on and so forth, you're right, it can get very confusing. You raised several points there, especially with something I hadn't even thought about is, how does a fire department get into a door that is designed to prevent people from breaking into? So to have that kind of reassurance and that what's the word, the the resilience, it's very important, I think, for the industry, and also building on that collective expertise and experience within Secured by Design, within the Fire Industry Association and the Door Hardware Federation. Obviously, these three organisations took the kind of unprecedented step of collaborating on a document entitled The Guide for Selecting Flat Entrance Door Sets. Could you just give us a little insight into this document and what it was intended for?
Yeah, it's intended to be a help guide for people looking to select a particular door. Now, let's be clear, you made some good points there, Rebecca. You're right. So in an ideal world, from a police perspective, we would want it to be what's called third-party certification, as we've already discussed, to be fair, making it sort of easier for a responsible person, for example, or an architect to select something that ticks that box in one go. But we also understand there are going to be situations where doors are already out there, and what to do and what sorts of considerations if you're going to replace that door in a high rise that's currently built, or what considerations are needed to be made, for example, if it needs to be maintained, i.e. look for properly qualified installers and maintainers that are part of. Ideally, you want them to be part of a certified installer or maintenance scheme where they're qualified to have a look at these doors and install them correctly and fixed. So the whole aim of this document, in collaboration between all three parties, was to try and make it easier and signpost people what to look for when specifying a flat entrance door, or looking at what to do when you're replacing one.
And just out of curiosity, do you update the either the document or the Secured by Design certification depending on whether, for example, a criminal produces a new type of, for want of a better word, product intended to burglar? Is that something that you guys do?
Absolutely right. So in terms of the police, PAS 24, for example, is the lowest security standard for a full door set that we recommend. There are others as the highest security threat, but the PAS 24 is aimed at the opportunist criminal, i.e. with tools that they can carry, or that he's just looking at a more opportunist, not a more determined, more sort of professional burglar. And PAS 24, as we discussed right at the beginning, in terms of where Secured by Design came back in the late 80s, it's in its fifth or sixth incantation now, as it's developed in line with the criminal attack. So the most recent incantation is past 2022 that our companies are going through now. Now, you're right with what you say. We keep an eye on with industry to currently evolve current updates with whatever relevant standard is updated, whether it's smoke, whether it's fire, whether it's enhanced security. So yes, you're right with what you said. It's that everything's updated, and we're currently in the process of updating the brochure as we speak to make sure it's even more fit for purpose with a field that's progressing.
And obviously, Secure by Design is an accreditation. So if a manufacturer is to go through that process, aside from it being fit to purpose, are there any other kind of benefits that is demonstrable to their buyers?
Yeah. I mean, from a police perspective, we act as an independent accreditation on behalf of the UK Police Service. So in the past, someone like me used to put my steel toe cap police boots on and try and get through the door. Those days are long gone. As I've said earlier, we work with properly qualified individuals that can test via a UCAS, for example, the BSI, LPCB, ER certification, elements. There are a number of other certification bodies that are properly qualified to say that this product does what it says on the tin, and the manufacturer isn't saying, it's not marking its own homework. And we insist on that. And for membership and comfort for people that are looking for products, they've got to continually maintain these performance requirements in order for them to be SPD membership, or else you can't be a member at all. And then we also do basic due diligence checks on the relevant companies to ensure that they're fit for purpose. And then we showcase that, not just for the audience of the UK Police Service, for example, people who actually work for the police service, but the public and other bodies such as local authorities, private industry, right through to our partners in counter-terrorism, where there are threats on the street, where we can assist of reducing the threat, for example, in that time economy. So there are a number of benefits for people who may be interested in Secure by Design.
And just out of curiosity, obviously, if you're updating and continuously reviewing the Secure by Design standard, could that affect the longevity of a manufacturer's product?
Yes, but we've got to remember what Secure by Design's here for. Yes, ideally, though we represent the UK Police Service and there are chief constables on our board, for example, who keep us, who direct us, we don't get any money from them. Yeah, keep us on the toes, for example. Yeah. So we keep them on the toes. But we don't get any money from the taxpayer. It's all self-funding. Let's be clear. It all comes from our members, and any money that's left over, it goes back into research to looking at the benefits of Secure by Design, for example, or one of the other crime prevention initiatives that we've discussed. Now, let's be clear. The aim is to keep people safe and prevent crime. And for example, we've got two projects on now. One, a number of our companies are going through the process of ensuring their doors meet fire, smoke, and security. And a lot of them are getting that because the certification bodies are putting them through the paces. And also they're going through transitional paces, those where it isn't fire or smoke is required for us the enhanced security. If you remember, I said past 2022. If they don't meet that in our deadline, then membership is suspended or they're removed. Okay. As I've said, we have 7 members. I have 7 staff who then maintain this, whether it's the doors and windows, as I've said earlier, whatever product that is, you've got to maintain the standards and update where applicable.
And is it just doors and door hardware that Secure by Design focuses on?
No, as I said earlier, Rebecca, obviously the important thing here is the fire, is the apartment doors that we've spoken about. But we do a range of things from component parts, hardware, cylinders, handles, right through to vehicle crime, asset marking products. For example, you may want to mark your bikes or vehicles, for example. Hostile vehicle mitigation, right up to things counter-terrorism, said windows, various alarms, so a whole host of products. If there's a crime prevention benefit and we can measure it with an acceptable standard that we call, and I've been rather amiss, any product that meets our standard is called what's called police preferred specification. And what that means is it meets a standard that is acceptable to us, because not all standards are acceptable because they don't meet a requirement of burglary resistance or criminal attack subject to the relevant risk. So in order to maintain police preferred specification, you have got to meet our standards and update where applicable, in answer to your question earlier.
And obviously, we briefly mentioned how the accreditation and the certification kind of evolves as new trends come to light. And obviously, we've got a lot of a large number of growing trends in this area at the moment across both fire and security. But one that I just wanted to pick up on, especially, is the inclusion of IoT devices, more so in security, but also in fire products. So how can Secure by Design accommodate this type of growth in a trend?
You're right. It is growing, and let's be clear, as we've said, stick with the fire apartment door, for example. There's no distinction between the two. So what Secure by Design have done, and we're going through, we've got a process in relation to IoT called Secured Connected Devices that looks at products that have got IoT capability. And we've worked with partners such as IESME and the BSI, for example, who are specialists in this area via government-backed schemes, to come up with a process that gives you some IoT sort of protection. And the reason we looked at this is we started looking at physical security, for example, on locks, and they may be able to resist a physical security attack by Billy Burglar. But then you got some youngster or whoever who had an iPhone or any other phone or a laptop, and because the IoT security on it, you could negate the physical security. So this is an evolving process, as you quite rightly aim, where we now are working with industry to develop standards, of which we've got a number of lock manufacturers on, and even BT we've got on, to be fair. But it is a growing market where companies, if there's an IoT requirement, they've got to meet our IoT requirement under secure connected devices, and they've also got to meet the physical security sort of elements if there's a standard available. And why that's key is the government's put out legislation on the Telecommunications Act, whereby any consumer device has got to meet various requirements to introduce measures to stop basic IoT or cyber attacks, and that's coming into force by the 29th of April next year. So we're pushing that out. So if a product's got an IoT capability and they're looking for police preferred specification, it's got to also meet that requirement as well. But it's evolving.
Yes, cyber and the physical side of security was very much previously separated, but in recent years, you're seeing this convergence of the two, and it means that every single physical security product is now having to make sure that it's cyber resilient as well. And the criminals are becoming smarter, and we just have to adapt and evolve and hopefully escalate accelerate at a faster level than they can. So it's great to see that you guys are fully implementing that as well. And just lastly as well, are there any other trends in this sort of area that you see shaping the industry, or areas that you think we should be focusing on to improve the standards of?
No, I think a growing sort of partnership as we have. I think we're indebted to our partners. The reason we're having this conversation today, they're getting the message out there, and we work more in collaboration in whatever that partner is. The police, for example, are no longer the sole experts here. Everyone's got a duty of care, so we work together with relevant stakeholders. And I have to say that without the assistance of the relevant stakeholder and qualified, let's be clear here, just because you're the police, those days are long gone at Dixon and Dot Green. You go and get the qualified expert or body and work with them. So this is the problem that we've got, and you work together to ensure the end product is fit for purpose and it's qualified. And that's where I see us growing, coupled with getting the IoT cyber stuff. That's a concern. But it is beginning to become more and more of a collaboration effect, i.e. physical security and IoT, where we're going. So a couple of areas there.
Oh, fantastic. Just before we part, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, as I said, let's be clear, from a Secure by Design point of view, yes, we would love people to become members, but the key here is to keep people safe for crime prevention. Make sure that when you're looking at the products, it's fit for purpose and it meets the relevant risk and application that it's intended for. That would be my advice. Go and get qualified advice to make sure that what you're going for meets the intended risk, and the application is the important aspect here, not Secure by Design.
Well, perfect. Thank you, Alfie. Really appreciate your time to talk to us today. If anybody has any further questions, they can reach out to Alfie directly on the platform or connect with the PCPI group exhibitor booth. Thank you. Cheers, Alfie.
Thank you very much.